For decades, the American military has been synonymous with overwhelming force. Big, expensive toys, tanks, jets, carriers. But the world is changing. It's not just about money. Threats are evolving. We're facing terrorism, cyber attacks, rogue states. You can't blow up a computer virus with a bomber. We need smarter, adaptable strategies. The 21st century is a high-stakes game of chess. Let's face it, folks. Even the US government doesn't have an unlimited supply of money. Shocking, I know. And while military spending might seem like a sacred cow, the reality is that it's been feeling the squeeze in recent years. The wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, while perhaps justified in the eyes of some, put a massive strain on the national coffers. Remember those? Seems like a lifetime ago. But it's not just about past spending, it's about future priorities. The American people are increasingly concerned about domestic issues like healthcare, education, and infrastructure. And let's be honest, those crumbling bridges aren't going to fix themselves. Something's gotta give, and unfortunately, for those who love a good military parade, that something is often the defense budget. This isn't a partisan issue, it's a pragmatic one. Even the most hawkish lawmakers understand that we can't keep throwing money at the Pentagon without some accountability. We need to be smarter, more efficient, and yes, more frugal with our defense spending. The days of writing blank checks for fancy new weapon systems are over. It's time to get our fiscal house in order, and that means making tough choices about where our priorities lie. Remember when war meant sending thousands of troops across borders? Yeah, those days aren't entirely gone, but the battlefields are changing. Today, some of the most important battles are fought not with bullets and bombs, but with keystrokes and code. Welcome to the age of cyber warfare, where the weapons are digital and the front lines can be anywhere with an internet connection. And it's not just cyber warfare that's changing the game. Drones, those unmanned aerial vehicles that used to be the stuff of science fiction, are now a ubiquitous presence in modern conflict. They're cheaper to operate than traditional aircraft. They don't put pilots at risk, and they can loiter over targets for hours, providing valuable intelligence and carrying out precision strikes. These new technologies aren't just changing how wars are fought, they're changing how we think about defense. The emphasis is shifting from brute force to information dominance, from massive ground invasions to targeted operations, and that shift has profound implications for the kinds of military hardware we invest in. Why spend billions on a fleet of tanks when a few well-placed hackers can cripple an enemy's infrastructure? Why risk pilots' lives in dogfights when a drone can do the job from a safe distance? Section 4, the Global Arms Bazaar International Competition and Collaboration. Here's the thing, America isn't the only shop on the block anymore. Remember those European allies we helped out after World War II? Well, they've gotten pretty good at making their own weapons, thank you very much. And they're not afraid to compete with us for lucrative arms deals around the world. Countries like Russia and China are also stepping up their game, developing advanced weapons systems and challenging America's technological edge. They're selling their wares to anyone who'll listen, often at a fraction of the cost of US-made equipment. It's a buyer's market out there, folks, and America can't rely on its past reputation alone. But hey, it's not all doom and gloom. This increased competition is actually forcing the US defense industry to innovate and become more efficient. And let's not forget about the importance of international collaboration. We can't be the world's policeman all the time, and working with our allies allows us to share the burden and tackle common threats together. Think of it like a military potluck. Everyone brings something to the table, and we all benefit from the shared feast of security. Section 5, a new era of defense adapting to evolving threats. So, where does this all leave us? In a word, transition. The old ways of doing things, the reliance on brute force and expensive hardware, are slowly giving way to a new era of defense. This new era is defined by adaptability, innovation, and a willingness to embrace new technologies and strategies. We're seeing this shift reflected in the Pentagon's priorities. There's a renewed focus on cybersecurity, artificial intelligence, and unmanned systems. We're also seeing a move away from large, vulnerable platforms like aircraft carriers and towards smaller, more agile ships that are harder to target. This doesn't mean we're abandoning traditional military power altogether, but it does mean that we're recognizing the limitations of brute force in a world where the lines between war and peace are increasingly blurred. The future of defense lies in being smarter, more adaptable, and yes, even a little bit cheaper. It's about fighting tomorrow's wars, not yesterday's. Section 6, the economic fallout impacts on the US arms industry. Now you might be thinking, John, this all sounds very well and good, but what about the poor defense contractors? Won't somebody please think of the defense contractors? And you'd be right to ask. The shift away from big-ticket military hardware is having a real impact on the US arms industry. Companies that have long relied on government contracts to build tanks, fighter jets, and other expensive toys are having to adapt or die. Some are diversifying their portfolios, moving into areas like cybersecurity or renewable energy. Others are downsizing, laying off workers, and struggling to stay afloat. It's a tough time to be in the business of war, especially when the nature of war itself is changing so rapidly. But as with any economic transition, there will be winners and losers. The companies that are able to adapt, to embrace new technologies and find new markets for their products, will be the ones that survive and thrive. The others, well, they might want to start brushing up their resumes. Section 7. The Uncertain Future, Navigating the Shifting Sands of Geopolitics. So, what does the future hold? Honestly, folks, if I had a crystal ball that could predict the future of warfare, I wouldn't be here talking to you. I'd be on a beach somewhere, sipping a margarita and counting my millions. But alas, the future remains as murky as ever. What we do know is that the world is becoming increasingly complex and interconnected. The threats we face are constantly evolving, and the old playbooks no longer apply. We can't simply rely on our military might to solve every problem. We need to be smarter, more adaptable, and more willing to work with our allies. The shift away